Senate district is about 60,000. So my district the last time was the third largest growth one in the state, and it was like 20,000 larger than 60.
Really?
So, and I'm sure I anticipate the same thing now. And there's talk that I think Polk County would pick up 2 House seats, Johnson would pick up 1, and Lynn would pick up 1. So we'll see what happens there. But I think there's certainly been a lot of growth, and almost every community in my district has grown a lot the last few years. And Tiffin's grown a zillion% or something. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, and wouldn't you rather have it going that direction than the other direction?
Oh yeah, and that's the one exciting part of this particular Senate district. It's not just rural or urban. It's urban, rural, suburban, everything. And I've got I have the research campus at the University of Iowa in it, and I have Cornell College, which is a private school in Mount Vernon, and all sorts of things in the district. So it keeps you busy, but I think it's good to have a diverse set of people.
Absolutely, and it's a challenge for you too.
Right.
To keep up with everything. Now, you're chair of the most powerful committee in the Senate. And I think it's very interesting that we here in Johnson County have the 2 most powerful committee chairs. Joe Bolcom is chair of the Ways and Means, and you are chair of Appropriations. I've always thought that Appropriations Committee was really the way we set priorities, because where you put your money is where your priorities are. How do you go about deciding what the priorities of the state are going to be?
That's a good question. Everything is essentially run by, you have the majority and minority caucus, and the majority caucus are the ones essentially who set the priorities for the legislature, and obviously the governor has his priorities also, and you look at those also. But the legislative priorities, the majority caucus usually sets those. And we would normally have 2 or 3 caucuses before the session starts and talk about issues and talk about what we'd like to get accomplished this year. And so we talk about those, and from that will be sort of general priorities which we want to do. And then to specific priorities on the specific, we have appropriations subcommittees. There are 7 appropriations subcommittees, like education, for example, economic development, justice system, which is corrections, and others. Mm-hmm. We have chairs and vice chairs of those, and we would work with those chairs to determine kind of what the priorities are there, and work with so-called leadership, which is, in our case, Senator Gronstall, who is our majority leader in the Iowa Senate, and Senator Kibbe, who's the president of the Iowa Senate. And we would work with them to come up with what the priorities are on those specific appropriations subcommittees.
Do you have to decide how many, does the caucus, which in this case is all the Senate Democrats, mm-hmm. right? Does the caucus decide by majority vote what they'll support, or just sort of by consensus? Or?
It's mostly a consensus mm-hmm. situation. We really don't take votes, but it's kind of a consensus situation. And education has been one of the priorities since I've been in the legislature, and will continue to be so. And our caucus is very pro-education, K through 12, and regents and community colleges and private colleges. So that's always one that we're really supportive of. And then a number of other issues also. And then you have various people in the caucus who are sort of experts in one area or another, and they're sort of looked to from the caucus to say something. I mean, like in corrections, for example, Senator Frazie's been involved in that a long time, and I have. So, and Senator Kryman. So, if the 3 of us say something, most people would say, "Well, that's probably where we want to move," or whatever. Right. So.
Right. You've been very active in public safety issues, and I think you were instrumental in getting a very tough sex offender law through. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Senator Keith Kryman, who's the chair of the Judiciary Committee in the Iowa Senate, he's an attorney from Bloomfield area. He and I have been working probably 4 years to try and deal with sex offenders and have a better law in Iowa than the 2,000-foot law. I mean, we were involved in, we passed that, and it just
now the 2,000-foot law means
it says that sex offenders cannot live or have a residence within 2,000 feet of a school or daycare center.
Okay.
So that really restricts where they can live. The problem is you can sleep anywhere, but where are you going to be hanging out, and where are you going to be, out and about and doing things? So it doesn't necessarily matter where you sleep at. It matters what you're doing, and so it doesn't really, doesn't really offer as much safety as you think it would. So we tried to put together some other better way of providing more safety in the state instead of the 2,000-foot law. And we worked like 4 years trying to get, because it's a sort of a dicey political issue.
right.
I mean, no one wants to be accused of being, soft on sex offenders.
No.
That we worked with the various caucuses, and we could never get there were 4 caucuses: the Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans, House Republicans, and House Democrats. And we could never get the magic number of 4. We had 3, I guess is the most we had, and we couldn't get, at that time it was the Senate Republicans, we couldn't get them on board. But this Adam Walsh law, which is federal legislation dealing with sex offenders, which is sort of required. The federal government can't tell us what to do, but they can take away funds from federal funds if we don't move forward with such laws as like Adam Walsh.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gave us kind of the opportunity to make some changes. And so Senator Kryman and others were really working together, trying to work with all the 4 caucuses to come up with legislation. And so now the 2,000-foot rule is still in effect for just some of the sort of more hardcore sex offenders. It's only a couple classes of sex offenders it's in effect for, and everyone else now are pretty much under the auspices of the Department of Corrections and Community-Based Corrections on how they regulate them. And we've set up these zones where they're not supposed to be, like around a playground and that sort of thing. And I think it makes a lot more sense and allows law enforcement a lot more tools to deal with that situation.
Because they can actually arrest somebody
Right.
for loitering around a, say,
Right.
a swimming pool or something.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had an incident here in Johnson County a few years ago, and actually Pat White was county attorney at that point, and we had a sex offender who actually had been at Hope House, and he was hanging around West High. Well, they had no way to essentially monitor him or get him out of there because there was no law against that situation.
And he wasn't sleeping there.
No, he wasn't sleeping there. Right. He wasn't sleeping there. He was loitering there. And the only thing that they did check and make sure that he did have was registered where he was living and that sort of thing. And I think they found out he gave a wrong address or something, and they were able to at least arrest him for that. Mm-hmm. And then I think they sort of fudged on some other charge to get him off the streets. But you clearly needed something a tool that you could use and deal with sex offenders. So I think law enforcement is very supportive of it. In fact, I went to the bill signing ceremony with Sheriff Lonnie Pokrabic. We didn't have a marked car though, so it's fine. So, but I've never seen so many guns and sheriffs in my life. I mean, the Sheriff's Association was very supportive of this, and they all really turned out on the steps of the Capitol to have the governor sign it. So there's all these sheriffs and some police officers from Des Moines also. Yeah. So they really are interested in having this work. So and it's also one of those things that I think is a little bit of a work in progress. That it's a good law, but I think maybe we may end up tinkering with it to make sure it works better in the next few years also. Mm-hmm. But it's pretty gratifying to see that something that Senator Kryman and I were working on for probably 4 years, we finally were able to get passed and signed into law. So,
of all the things that you work on, Bob, what to you is the most important, or the most what takes the most of your attention?
That's kind of interesting. They're sort of different things. And one of the things that I guess I didn't realize till I got in the legislature was how much constituent work you have. Where we have, in fact, I'm working on an issue right now with the DHS, somebody who was receiving